Right. Welcome everybody. Presentation of 2021 on the Nova and Azure Nova 365 and Azure user group. My name is Jay Leask, and we are very excited to bring Srinivas from Microsoft, right, Srinivas?
Yes.
Very excited to bring Srinivas to talk about. Well, I'll let you go, and I'll let you tell us what you're going to talk about. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Thank you. And welcome everyone to Nova 365 and Azure user group. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers, Dan and Jay, for this opportunity to present. And also thanks to the attendees for investing your valuable time joining this session. And disclaimer, since we all are working at home, anytime you can see my kids running into me, I might take a break in between. So today's session includes discussion on various topics that include SharePoint Framework, CDN, and versioning. Yeah, so we are going to touch upon multiple topics and that overlap in many ways. I will be using a number of acronyms in this session. So I put a nice little table over here. So if you can gloss over, just get familiar with those acronyms, that will be nice. A little about me. My name is Srinivas Varukala, and I work as a senior customer engineer at Microsoft. You might know my role as PFE, Premier Field Engineer, because that was a quite popular name. Now they rebranded it as customer engineer. I just finished my 10-year anniversary working at Microsoft this month. So I'm super happy and proud about that. And my focus all these years have been mostly on SharePoint development. And then, of course, SharePoint Online and M365 in a broader sense. I also did a lot of work on Microsoft Graph. In fact, I was one of the organizers of the 30 days Microsoft Graph series where we put out 30 blog posts, one blog post each day for a whole month. Now we are doing a similar blog series called MS Graph Mailbag. If you follow this hashtag on Twitter, you can see we are putting out 2 blog posts every month. So that will go on for a long time. I also enjoy working on Azure with concentration on PaaS mostly. And finally, I have a deep experience with Power Automate and moderate experience with Power Apps. You can always reach out to me via any of these options, email or Twitter. And I do put out some interesting findings on my Twitter timeline. And if it makes sense, I also blog at my website here. What to expect from today's session? As audience, in the next 1 hour, you will see a few slides and a bunch of demos to learn about various CDN options that exist in M365 ecosystem and how SharePoint Framework project static assets get stored in CDN by default. And we'll also find out how to adjust the project configuration to take control on the CDN locations. Then we will switch gears and talk about some of the basic concepts of versioning, the semantic versioning standards, understand the various version numbers in the SharePoint Framework project. There will be a lot of tips and tricks along the way that I'll show in the demos. The 2 documented options that's used for SharePoint Framework and M365 workloads are Office 365 CDN and Azure CDN. The Office 365 CDN or any CDN, as a matter of fact, improves performance by caching static assets closer to the browsers requesting them. That helps in speeding up the downloads and reducing the latency. Hence, the main purpose of CDN is to host static assets like images, style sheets, and JavaScript files. CDN helps improve performance in many ways. To begin with, It offloads the burden from our M365 cloud servers to the edge network. Even a tiny file or an API request offloaded will make an immense difference due to the cloud scale. CDNs are purpose-built file servers equipped with a high-performing network, ensuring low latency for the assets. In addition to that, they leverage the highly efficient compression and multiplexing algorithms using the HTTP2 protocol. Finally, CDN is globally distributed to bring assets closer to the end users, no matter where they are located. Now let's double click into M365 CDN. There are two types of CDN offerings, public and private. These are available for all M365 users without any additional charges. Both public and private CDN uses SharePoint Online libraries that we all are familiar with as the containers to hold the assets. As the name speaks for itself, the public CDN assets are anonymously accessible, whereas the private assets are accessible only if user has permission to the library where they are uploaded. The table also shows the default file types that can be served through these CDN options. Now let's jump into the demo, and we'll use some PowerShell to check various CDN features and capabilities. And we'll also talk about some CDN origins, how to see and manage policies. And also I'll follow up that with a demo of using images in SharePoint site, and I'll explain you how the SharePoint Online rewrites the URLs. So let's jump into the demo. So today's sorry.
One quick question for you, Srinivas.
Yes.
On the previous slide, you had a comment on there about third-party CDNs. Is that something that's no longer supported, or?
That's a gray area. So based on the documentation, what I gather is you can use third-party CDNs if you want, but there are a couple of caveats, right? So first one, which is a simple one, is you will not get the URL rewrite capabilities that you get if you use a M365 CDN. And second, and most importantly, the documented one, which says that these third-party CDN providers may have privacy and compliance standards that differ from what we provide in M365. So the data cached through them may not conform to the Microsoft data processing terms. So you might be outside the boundaries of the compliance standards that we put around M365. That's a caveat.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge caveat. So
it is. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you kind of spelling that out. I think I saw something maybe a year or so ago about Verizon partnering up as a third party, but I would surmise that Microsoft, to your point, if Microsoft is in control of it, they can make certain the experience is proper and wonderful, whereas similar to running on-premises SharePoint environments in the past, it's now the duty of whoever is kind of operating it to make certain it works well. So that's helpful tidbits about like URL rewrite and whatnot. Anyway,
yeah.
Apologies for interrupting. I will be quiet.
No. Feel free. I was going to say that, anyone, if you have any questions, please stop. And with that context, what I'm speaking about, it's better to, answer those questions right away. And one more point I would like to call out, which kind of beats the whole purpose of this session, is certain tenants do not support the CDN capabilities that we are discussing today, the Office 365 CDN actually. Like tenants in the US government and China and Germany, today they do not currently support Office 365 CDN as per the documentation. Can anyone ratify that? Because I don't have access to a government cloud, but if any of you have access, please do verify. So let me connect to my tenant using, I'm using the PNP PowerShell. You could also use a SharePoint standard PowerShell too. So to check whether CDN is enabled or not, you can do get a PNP CDN enabled, and you can check whether public is enabled. In my case, it returns true, which means it's enabled. Even private is enabled. If you want to enable CDN, if it's not enabled, then you can do either public or private, or instead you can pass both, and it's going to enable both public and the private CDNs. And now let's talk about the CDN origins, right? Let's see what is the origin. Origin is nothing but the container where you define the location where you upload your assets. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to use SharePoint libraries as our containers to hold the assets. So those are the origins. So let's see, we have a default set of origins that we get. So CDN origins, again CDN type. So by default, you'll see a couple of origins already defined, like master page, style library, and client-side assets. I went ahead and added a couple of more here, like site assets, my images. And if you see, there's a wildcard asterisk used over here. So what this signifies is that any SharePoint online site that has a library with this name, like master page or style library or client-side assets, all those libraries will act as a CDN containers. So any assets that you put it in those libraries are anonymously accessible. So I went ahead and added a couple of more here, and you can see you can also add a specific site and a specific document library as your CDN location, if you will. You can also add a specific folder if you want as your CDN location, even that's supported. So to add a origin, CDN origin, you pass in the CDN type, let's say public, and the origin URL. So here I can pass in like maybe my docs, let's say. So now if I go and retrieve the origins, you'll see the my docs is added, and in the bracket you see a configuration pending. What this means is it's still syncing behind the servers. Due to the cloud scale, it takes some time for it to propagate across all the servers. So it takes about 10 to 15 minutes before this gets propagated. Let's see what are the CDN origins for private. So private are a bit limited here. By default, you have user photo.aspx and site assets. I added a third one here as, and my folder name is called private assets. Similarly, you can add a new private origin by passing private here. For now, I'll skip that. So that's the concept of origins. Now let's discuss about the concept of policies, the CDN policies. So there are a set of policies that you can create, and there are also some policies that are by default created for you. So let's see those policies are CDN policies public. So as you can see, there are 3 policies that are possible here. Let's see. So the first one is include file extensions, which means those are the file extensions that are supported in that library for all the CDN locations. The second one is called exclude restricted site classifications, which means you can create a policy so that your confidential sites or secret sites they do not support CDN locations. The third one is whether you want to enable CDN on the sites where no script is enabled or not. So that's a kind of control that you can have over the CDN configuration. So to create, before creating, let's see, check out the private CDN policies. You have a similar set of policies again here, except you can see the file extensions that's supported in private are limited compared to the public ones. So let's see how to add a new policy here. Okay, to save some time, let me copy it from my notes here. So I'm using the PNP here. So let's see, this is PNP tenant CDN policy. So you pass in the CDN type, and the policy type is include file extensions and the policy value. So in this way, I'm going to append CSS and PNG as supported file extensions. If I want play with a different policy, let's see this one. So in this case, I'm adding exclude restricted site classifications along with the policy value of confidential and secret. So any site that has this compliance label confidential or secret is applied on a site, those sites will never be served as a CDN locations. So I highly recommend for all the customers that you work with to go create a policy so that they disable all the confidential sites out of the CDN realm. Any questions? I will jump into my other demo. So here I went ahead and created a site here called Corp Assets. Let's imagine I have a small company called Contoso, and I decided to put all my assets in a central location, and that central location is this site. And within that site, I created two libraries, client-side assets and private assets. Right. So my client-side assets is a public CDN, whereas the private assets is a private CDN. That's how I configured it. So in this library, I have a bunch of pictures. Let's copy tools, copy the URL, edit the page. So I pasted that URL, and it identifies that it's coming from this Corp Asset site. Let's go ahead and insert that. We publish. Now if you press F12 to see where this image is getting served from, if you go to Sources tab, and you should see public CDN. So if you expand that, tools.png, as you can see, it is getting served from a public CDN endpoint, not from directly from the site. So let's go ahead and copy this so that you can see it better. So that's a URL. Now, as I mentioned, the assets from the public CDNs are anonymous. So let's see if we access this in private window here. But I do get an access denied. And why is that? If it's anonymous, it should be accessible from anywhere, right? But it is not. They do have some level of what do you call, like a security mechanism where the assets will be served from. The mechanism is nothing but very simple. So if I go to Postman, paste that link, I still get access denied. But if I go to headers and add a referrer, and the referrer should be any domain, but from SharePoint.com. So it could be ABC, 123, whatnot. And now if I send this, the picture is served. So as long as there's a referrer that's coming from SharePoint.com, the assets are served. Otherwise, it won't be. So since all the images are hosted in within the SharePoint side, they always get served. So that's the URL rewriting mechanism. Although we inserted a picture with a straight link to the image, the URL got rewritten into a CDN URL. So behind the scenes, SharePoint Online detects that this is a CDN asset and rewrites the URL. Now let's go ahead and add an image from the private asset library. We'll refresh, and we'll see the same. Do the same thing. Press F12, and now you see a new event source added. That's private CDN. Again, the URL rewriting happened behind the scenes, and the image is getting served from a private CDN endpoint. Copy this link. This looks a little different. It has some additional parameters here. These are called EAT and OAT parameters. EAT and OAT. What it stands for is origin authorization token and end authorization token. These tokens get generated only if and only the user accessing this asset has permission to the container of this assets. In this case, the container is the private assets library. Only if the user has access to the library, these will be generated. So these are nothing but encoded time. So if you copy this, this is a Unix time. To decode that, you can go to a site like this one. If you put here, as you can see, it expires in about an hour. So by default, those assets are cached for 1 hour and accessible anonymously, even though it's private CDN. They are accessible for an hour as long as you have the referrer again. It has a similar limitation when you access it. Now let's get back to demo or to the slide. Okay, any questions there? All right. So as we all know, SharePoint Framework is entirely a client-side solution. This means it heavily relies on static assets like JavaScript, CSS, images, etc. SharePoint Framework can see a lot of benefit if it leverages the CDN capabilities that M365 provides out of the box. Hence, the recommendation to use M365 CDN. SharePoint Framework Projects has certain configuration parameters that assist you in using the CDN capabilities. Using the CDN path, the option that you can find in write manifest.json file, you can define the location where the static assets will be uploaded. Starting from SharePoint Framework version 1.4, a new parameter called include client-side assets got added. And with that, you can this flag you can find in the package solution.json file. This is by default true. So when this is enabled, all the static assets are by default packaged inside of the SPFx file. And when you deploy this SPFx file in the app catalog, the static assets are extracted from this package and automatically uploaded to the client-side assets library that's located in the app catalog site. Customers love this feature because they don't have to worry about setting a custom CDN path, and there's no additional work of uploading assets to that location, to a custom location, since it's all taken care of by SharePoint Online behind the scenes automatically. So we'll jump into a quick demo, and I'll show you where I provisioned 2 SharePoint Framework projects, and one with out-of-the-box settings, no changes, nothing, We'll deploy that and how it behaves. And then in the second demo, I'll show you how you can take control of where the assets can be stored. And the third demo with Azure CDN, due to time constraint, I will not be showing that. Instead, I'll put a link in the chat window where it's a Microsoft Docs article where there's a step-by-step on how to use Azure CDN as your CDN location for SharePoint Framework projects. So I've created 2 projects here. Let's see. Let me grab this window from here. So there are 2 folders here, 2 projects, out-of-the-box CDN and custom CDN. We'll start with the out-of-the-box CDN. These are nothing but I've just ran yo at Microsoft/SharePoint, and that's how these folders are. No changes done. Very minor changes. I just changed the title. So let's open it up. Oh, it's in this window. So the only change I did here is went into the code and just put a welcome message here. That's the only change. So the key things that by default, as soon as you create a SharePoint Framework project, the thing that you need to check is here. Package solution, you'll see include client-side assets by default is set to true. So what this means is the CDN path that's in write manifest JSON file doesn't make sense because this you're asking to put in a certain location and this one says all the assets are within the package. So that kind of clash. So either this should be, they're mutually exclusive. So what happens when we deploy this as a package? Let's check it out. So I'm going to bundle this. So what it does behind the scenes, it's going to minify and bundle all my style sheets and JavaScript files. It's going to create some folders over here, which it uses as a staging area. All right, bundling is done. Now we'll package it. So while that's running, the ID within the package solution, you can see this GUID. So this GUID will be the GUID corresponding to your web part. So just remember that 756 number. So once we package, it creates a new folder here called SharePoint Solution. And in that, it adds SPFx file. Let's open it up. So there is a SPFx file. And if you rename this to a zip file and extract that file, the contents of this SPFx file are actually in here. So it's literally if you select all this and send it to a zip file, that's a SPFx file. And within this, you can see the client-side assets. And these are all my assets. The images, the JavaScript, CSS, all those are put in this folder. Let's go ahead and upload this into my app catalog. So it says that it's going to get content from the following domains, which is SharePoint Online in this case, and we'll make this solution available to all sites. So behind the scenes, what it does now is SharePoint is going to extract the contents of that SPFx and uploads the client-side assets to a standard location within the app catalog site. So if I look at site contents, you will not see that library over here because that's a hidden library. But if you navigate to it, to client-side assets library, you can see all those folders. So let me refresh this and we should see a folder created about a minute ago. So 756. So this is the GUID corresponding to our web part. And all the client-side assets that I showed you earlier get uploaded over here. Now let's go to another demo site here. Refresh this so that you can see the web part when I go into edit mode. There you go. So again, let's refresh. So we can see the web part, and to make sure these the assets are being served from public CDN, we can open the F12 developer toolbars and look here. As you can see, the JavaScript files are being served from the app catalog, client-side assets, and from that particular folder with the GUID. Now let's jump into the other project, the custom CDN. So in this, to save some time, I already bundled and packaged the solution. And there are two changes I made in this project. First thing, I set this include client-side assets to false. And in write manifest, I put a location where I want my assets to be stored. So in this case, I have given a public CDN URL to this SharePoint site, corp assets, and the client-side assets folder. Library. And within that library, I chose to put my assets into a custom CDN assets folder. Let's see. So within client-side assets, there's a custom CDN assets folder. So that's where I would like all the assets corresponding to this project get up to be stored. So now let's go ahead and see the project. This is a custom CDN SharePoint solution. So from the get-go, you'll see the difference in the package size. The out-of-the-box CDN is 14 KB, whereas this one is just 10 KB. And the reason is because we choose to not include the assets within the SPPKG with that flag, include client-side assets set to be false. So all the client-side assets are somewhere else. So where are they located? It's actually located in here in the temp folder, in the deploy folder. These are the assets. So we'll go back to that SharePoint solution and going to upload to app catalog. And this time we will see a prompt with a different message. It says that this project is going to get content from the following domains, and the domain is the public CDN. This is what we set as a CDN path. So that's what it's highlighting here. Let's deploy this. And again, if we go here and refresh, we should see a new folder created here, 6B32. This folder actually has doesn't have all the assets because we have a custom CDN path. What it has is only the image files that comes out of the box with the project. But there are no JavaScript files here because we set a custom CDN path. Now, if we go to this website and attempt to add our custom. So question, would this web part work now if I add to this page?
No one wants to be wrong.
All right. So the web part is going to fail. Let me expand that error and you'll see the details why it's failing. As you can see, it fails, saying that it's not able to access the JavaScript files that's located in the corp asset client-side assets library, this JavaScript file. Because since we put a custom CDN path, SharePoint, says it's not my job, it's your job to take care of uploading the assets. So it's the onus is on us to upload those assets to that custom location. So what we need to do is go to the temp folder and copy these assets to the custom location that we created. Okay, now let's do a refresh. Edit the page, make sure the web part is there. It's gone. So let's re-add that. So it works now. Oh, wow. That looks like I found a bug. So if you now expand this developer toolbar, you can see the public CDN. Access should be being served for both the web parts. Public CDN. Expand this. And now you can see, apart from the app catalog, now our custom location is also showing up here, where the JavaScript files are being served from. So that's the difference between using the out of the box and the custom location for your CDN location. All right, let's go to yeah. So this one, if at all you accidentally set your CDN base path to a custom location, and also the include client side asset is set to true, in that case, you'll see some kind of warning which says the CDN path will be ignored, favoring the include client side assets. So just for FYI for you. So some of the gotchas from my experience. So client-side assets, that's library is a default public origin for all your SharePoint Framework projects. And so if customer has enabled CDN before December 2017, that client-side assets library will not be created automatically. So it's up to you. You need to create that library if it doesn't exist in the app catalog site. And files used by SharePoint Framework web parts can utilize only public CDN. The private CDN wouldn't work with SharePoint Framework projects. The assets that you put in the private CDN, they must be published and have a major version. Only then they get served from the private CDN. So one more question. So I added my web part to that SharePoint site, and I invited a B2B user, a guest user, to that site. Will that user see the web part? Take a guess. Or if you know the answer, let me know. The answer is it really depends. Let's say if CDN is enabled on your tenant, the public CDN, in that case, the assets are anonymously accessible. So any user who already has access to the SharePoint site will see the web part. Let's say a CDN is not enabled. What happens in that case? SharePoint Framework projects will still extract the assets into the client-side assets library within the app catalog site. But B2B user doesn't have any permissions to the app catalog site or the client-side assets library. So the B2B user will see the web part being failed with the same error that we saw earlier. So if you are using B2B users, ensure that they have access to the client-side assets library. Now let's switch gears and talk about versioning. which is a common requirement in all our projects, whether it's a SharePoint Framework or ASP.NET project.
Hey,
Yeah.
Srinivas, if I can jump in real quick, there was a question in the chat. Is there a benefit to using a separate CDN path instead of the client assets?
Yeah, I mean, there's no benefit, but there are some organizations which prefer to have control on where their assets are being uploaded. Maybe it's a business unit specific a folder they create in a specific site. So there are different companies' requirements. So that's the only thing. Other than that, um, I don't see any other benefit other than just segregation of your assets. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you. And Anthony, if you have any follow-ups, feel free to let us know.
Right. So as a project grows, right, we keep on adding more and more packages and dependencies to integrate further integrations, and it's more likely to find ourselves one day in a place we often call as a dependency hell. This is especially more often with node projects. SharePoint Framework also relies on a number of NPM packages. Hence, it's important to understand this topic. So semantic versioning is a standard that dictates how version numbers are assigned and incremented. A version number follows the pattern of the major, minor, and a patch with a dot separating those three numbers. So when do you increment these numbers? Whenever you make a small change or fix a bug and your project is still overall compatible with the backward compatible with your older version of the project, that's when you just bump up the patch number. When you make a small to medium change, but still your product is backward compatible, in that case, you increment the minor number. When you make a major change or major additions to your project, which makes your project not incompatible with your previous older versions, then you increment the major number. That's the standard protocol we use for this versioning. So along with the version numbers, you will see there is characters like caret and tilde that's used as suffixes with the version numbers. These give additional control on what versions of the packages your project is compatible with. Tilde is the most restrictive one. Similar to how .NET projects has dependencies on DLLs and NuGet packages, SharePoint Framework projects depends on NPM packages. When a package is added to a SharePoint Framework project using npm install command, the package is downloaded to the node modules folder and an entry is made in the package.json file. The package versions use the caret and the tilde notations that we discussed earlier. NPM also creates the package-log.json file simultaneously. In contrast to the package.json file, the package log file contains the exact versions of the NPM packages. And ideally, this file should go into your source control along with your package.json file. Because when you or any other user in the anytime later, they clone the project and run the command npm install, it will install the exact versions of those packages and dependencies, and your project will compile every time. The third one, npm shrink wrap. Using npm shrink wrap command, it will help you to freeze the entire tree of dependencies for your project. It creates a JSON file, npm-shrinkwrap.json file, which records exact version of each package and that package's dependencies, and it goes in deep. And usually this is recommended when you publish your project to npm library, or if an organization maintains its own library on premises, that's when this is used. You will see that there are multiple version numbers in any given SharePoint Framework project. There's a version number in package solution file. There is a version numbers in the multiple manifest file that comes with the components in a SharePoint Framework project. And then there's another version number in package.json file. So what all are these? I think what we need to focus as a SharePoint developer is only two. The package.json file, the version number that you see in this file is a version of your overall project. Whereas the version that you see in the package solution file is a version for your specific web part. As you can see, there's a difference here. The version in the package.json is 3 numbers following the semantic version standards, whereas the web part one is 4 numbers. This is following the Microsoft standard. The 4th number is called the revision. So I'll jump into a quick demo, and based on the time, this will be my final demo. I'll discuss some NPM versioning concepts, and we'll check out the version numbers that appear in the SharePoint Framework projects. All right, let's make a folder here. Let's consider demo is our NPM project. Now, to initiate a package.json file in this project, the easiest way would be npm init and run through the wizard. It asks a bunch of questions like what is your project name, description, email, and stuff like that. But to avoid all of that, to save time, I'm going to pass in -- yes. And what it does, it creates a sample package.json file with using the folder name as a project name. Let's open it up. So in my demo folder, there's only one file, package.json, created by npm. And you can see the name, version number, and a few other details. So this is a version number that we are talking about. So let's say you want to increment the number. You could do it manually, but in real scenario, you need to automate it in some fashion, be it through gulp tasks or through your pipelines. So to bump up the number, you can do npm version and patch. So as you can see, it incremented the patch number in the file. If I want to increment my minor number, you pass in minor, and that's going to increment the minor number. So you can use these commands in your build process to automate the version numbers. And so you can also bump up the major number in the same fashion. Now let's talk about the dependencies. Right now you're not seeing any dependencies over here. Let's go ahead and add a dependency. npm install, let's say I picked EasyEven because that's a very small package. So npm is going to download that package, and it's going to add a section here called dependencies with the package name and the version number. As you can see, it's using a caret symbol for the version number. So let me introduce you to the other concept of dev dependencies. Before that, I forgot talking about package lock JSON file. So simultaneously, as soon as I added a dependency, it created a package lock JSON file where you can see the exact version numbers. There are no caret or tilde notations over here. These are the exact numbers. And not just the EasyEven, you can see other packages also. What this means is EasyEven depends on other packages. So it's going to define the tree of dependencies within the package -log file. Now going back to the dev dependencies. So in a development environment, you might be dependent on certain packages like JSLint or TSLint, or could be Mocha, Chai, or in a SharePoint world, you will be using SharePoint Workbench. All these are dependencies that you don't need to carry into production environments. That's just going to bloat your project. So those dependencies are needed only in the development environment. So in that case, what you do is when you install those dependencies, let's say jslint, and say you pass in --save-dev, and it's going to add a new section over here called dev dependencies with the package name and the version number. So the benefit is, as I said, these dependencies will not be published when you publish your package. Only the dependencies will be published into your package, making your package small. Is there anything else? Yeah, now let's switch to the SharePoint Framework project. So let's look at the various version numbers that we see. So here, the version number that you see here is 4 digits, and that's the version number that you will see in corresponding to your web part for your project. Whereas the version number that you see here in package or this one, this is a version number for your overall project. So let's see where you can see those numbers in the SharePoint site and app catalog. So if you go here, let's pick, yeah, you can see those 4-digit number. That's the number corresponding from the package solution file. Let's see this project because I want to show in the site contents page too. It's called demo SPFx assets client-side solution. It's 1.0.0.2. Now, if I go to my site here and site contents page, this is that same package. If I go to details, you will see the same version number reflecting over here. Now, to see the version number that's coming from the package.log file, which is in this case like 0.0.1. Let's see where do you find that? So if you press Control F12, you'll see a nice panel opening up here. This is related to the modern pages only, where you will see all the components that are part of this page that gets loaded over here. You see some nice performance charts over here. You can see each web part, how much time it's taking to load, along with the manifest. So usually these are somewhere in the bottom. So if I go select that, you can see the version. This signifies the version of your overall project from where that web part is loading from. So how about versioning web parts for software development lifecycle? If you recollect from the olden days of SharePoint add-ins, we had a nice story of upgrading an add-in wherein the site collection administrators have the choice whether to upgrade their solution in each site collection. If only they upgrade their solution, they will see the updates in that web part. So do we have similar story with SharePoint Framework? Unfortunately, no. And the reason is, let me use this diagram to explain. So let's say you uploaded an SPPKG file to your app catalog, tenant level app catalog, and SharePoint Online extracts the assets from that package into a CDN location. And it's going to automatically push the manifest to the SharePoint sites. Or it depends, again, it won't push this manifest automatically. If you choose to deploy your web part automatically, it will. If not, this will happen whenever the site collection owner goes into site content page and selects add an add-in. That's when a manifest file gets pushed. So in this manifest file, there are references to the assets, those JavaScript files are being referred back to the CDN location, which again exists in the app catalog site. Same thing. There's a new site tomorrow, the manifest gets pushed there, and that points to the same location, and so on and so forth. So let's say tomorrow you pushed a version 2 of your SPPKG file. As soon as you upload in the app catalog, SharePoint is going to extract those assets and going to overwrite your CDN location with the new assets. And then it's going to push the new manifest to all the sites. And the new manifest now points to the new files in the CDN location. So end of the day, user always sees the new assets in the web part, which means there is no way that user can not block the latest update for a SharePoint Framework web part. They always see the newest update as soon as it gets deployed to the app catalog. So what options do we have in that case? The options I can think of is a site collection level app catalog, where you can sideload your SPPKG into a specific site collection for your testing, or maybe it's your business case to have an app only for that site collection. So that's one way. The other solution would be creating separate projects for the same project, but with different GUIDs. I've seen a number of blog posts actually where they laid out the step-by-step how to do that with minimal work. So I have the links in my notes. So you can do either of that. So the versioning gotchas, even though there's no versioning story in a true sense, but you still need to bump up the version numbers. Otherwise, you might see an error like this: a different version of this app is already installed with the same version. I've seen these errors, and as soon as I bump up the version number and deploy it, this error is gone. And as we discussed, any instance of the web part in your tenancy will automatically use the updated version. Even though that's the, but the site collection owner will still see a prompt called update prompts in the site contents page. So as I was showing you earlier, here, if there's an update to this web part, they'll see a new version is available to download. Honestly, it's not required to download anything there. Site collection owner can just ignore that button and still be getting the latest updates for their web parts. And finally, we hit this issue with 2 customers recently, where they are uploading new versions of the project, but the web part is still picking up the older version of the assets. So it took a lot of time to figure out what's happening. Was they initially deployed that package to the site collection level app catalog, and that web part was picking the assets from the site collection level client-side assets library. But later on, customers started deploying the updated version of the project into tenant level app catalog. Although the new assets gets deployed to tenant level app catalog, this web part was always referring to the older versions that located within the site collection level. So it took some time, so I thought I'll put that over here. So beware of that version conflict. So that concludes, and the final recap, we discussed the various CDN options that's available and how to configure your SharePoint framework and understand the configuration. We discussed the semantic versioning, the basics, how to avoid the dependency hell, the versioning limitations that we have in SharePoint framework project lifecycle, and a few gotchas along the way that you learn about CDN and versioning. Right. 12:30. Not sure. Is there any questions, Jay, in the chat?
No, you've answered the question in the chat. We got a couple of thank yous in there. This was great. This is, I don't normally work in the SharePoint framework space, so it's nice to see how this works. And we'll get this up on our YouTube channel as well, so that hopefully we can get a little bit more traction on it. I'll let you know as soon as it gets up there. For everyone who's left, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. But Srinivas, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm glad that you came out into the community and shared this information.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to more such collaboration in the future. In fact, I put a slide over here, like I am working on different topics over here, like I can do more sessions like this on topics like this. And please feel free to provide any feedback that you have based on today's session, or for future sessions, if you want to reach out, you can always reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. For those of you who are still here or listening to the recording, make sure you check out upcoming events at nova365.ms. And I just posted the YouTube in the chat. We'll go ahead and put it out on Twitter as well, so you have easy access. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get future updates. Subscribe to our meetup so you get notifications of new events. And Srinivas, have a wonderful day, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.